Marquise is an interactive tool for creating applications by demonstration. The main components of Marquise is your basic drawing editor similar to MacDraw. You have a palette that you can create objects on, that you select from menus and so forth. The main additions in Marquise is two windows, one of which is the feedback window. The feedback window shows the user what Marquise is inferencing while the user is demonstrating his program. With the feedback window, the user is able to edit and change what Marquise is inferring. The other window is the mode window. The mode window stores the global state of the application in the form of things similar to a spreadsheet variable or spreadsheet slot. The user is able to change things via pop-up menus and such. The application we're going to create will contain a create palette which will contain three items. Will contain a rectangle, line, and a narrow line. To tell Marquise that this is a create palette, we simply select an item from the menu. A palette is simply an association of values with the objects in the window. These values are fine, so we'll select OK. When we do that, Marquise creates a mode which represents the state of the palette and stores the values in a pop-up menu. We are also able to change the name of the mode to something more reasonable simply by editing the text. In this case, we're going to say it's my palette. Now Marquise knows about that these three objects are a palette, but doesn't know how to how to interact with this palette to the user. What we're going to do is demonstrate the feedback of this palette by using the typical box surrounding the object. To demonstrate things to Marquise, we use one of various modes. The cursor is used to show which mode you're in by having a letter next to it. Our first mode we used was build mode, which was used to simply create the objects. We're now going to go to train mode, which records the events the user performs and records them. So we go to train mode and we click on top of one of the palette items. This event is recorded in the feedback window as an English sentence, saying that the left mouse button was clicked over a graph component of our palette. We now use this event to demonstrate, we now move to show mode to demonstrate what to do with this event. Specifically, what we're going to do is move the rectangle to cover the item that we selected. Now Marquise knows to move the rectangle every time a palette item is selected. Furthermore, we have to change the palette mode to reflect the current item selected, to tell Marquise that an item was selected. Now whenever we select a palette item by clicking on it, Marquise will both move the rectangle and change the value in the mode window as the feedback window records. And now we can go to run mode and test out what Marquise has inferred to see whether or not it's correct. And Marquise apparently has correctly inferred in this case. Now we're going to continue making our application. To do this, we will create a rectangle as a drawing area, which is usually a good mechanism for separating parts of the application for the user. And we're going to demonstrate how to create a rectangle, which is what the item in the palette is indicating. So we're going to create a rectangle using the typical drag motion. So while in train mode, we drag and then switch to show mode immediately. This creates two icons. The first where we press down, which is indicated by the icon with the down arrow, and the second one, which is the drag icon, which is the last place we were moving when we switched to show mode. These icons are used to infer locations for graphical objects. Specifically, this rubber band rectangle, which we are simply going to which we simply drew using your typical editor commands. Now Marquise does not know that we only intend this behavior to work when we select it on the palette item. So we add the mode dependency to the behavior, which tells Marquise that this behavior only works when the rectangle is selected in the palette. Now we want to finish off this behavior with the up click, which is represented by an icon with an up arrow, and we go back to show mode and show that we want to get rid of the rubber band line, which was simply a temporary in the first place, and we draw our final rectangle, which is the final created object for this behavior. Now you can go to run mode and test to see whether dragging out a rectangle works. It should be noted that any feedback could have been used. Here we note that it does not work while a line is selected, and in fact only works when rectangle is selected. Now we're going to add a feature to allow us to select rectangles, meaning to highlight them in some specific way. Here we are going to simply draw 4 small rectangles at the corners of the rectangle that we want to select. Normally selection rectangles will be very small items and they'll all be the same size, but we want to just do this for time constraints. Currently Marquise has inferred this to mean that every time you click on an object, create 4 rectangles on its corners. But since we really mean for the item to just make the old ones disappear, we delete the old ones, and now Marquise knows that only one set of rectangles should appear at a time when an item is selected. Furthermore, we'd like to record what item we have selected, so what we do is we create a mode which stores the name of the selected item. And so we add a mode of our own simply by selecting out of a menu. We can change the name of this mode to be selected, and we set the value of this mode to be the name of the selected item, simply by using a menu item. Now when the item is clicked on, it'll display rectangles at its corners, and it'll change the value in the mode window to be the same as what item that you just clicked on. Here we can see that the value of the mode window is changing as we select different items. So now we have the ability to create and select rectangles. We'll add a third ability, which will be to delete rectangles. And to do this, we will create a delete button. Now, hypothetically, we could use a widget such as a button that goes up and down, but here we'll just be simple and make the word delete with a rectangle around it, since that's slightly faster to create. Now what we want to show is that when we click on the delete button, that the selected rectangle will be deleted. So we train and show a click event onto delete rectangle, and then we go to show mode and show that we delete the selected rectangle. Now Marquise knows that whenever you press the delete button, that you're supposed to delete the selected rectangle. The final item we're going to create is a color palette. To create the color palette, we use basically the same mechanism as we did for a create palette. And we just simply select a menu item, which brings up a dialog box, which once again associates values with objects. We're going to the items are once again stored as in the mode window, as values are conveniently in a pop-up menu. For the feedback of this palette, we're going to use something slightly different than the create palette, and that we're not going to use a rectangle surrounding the box, but instead we'll have a line that points to the currently selected palette item. So we click on the property that we want to train with and show first that the mode was being changed to its mode value, palette value, and then we want to point the line to the correct rectangle. Now Marquise has inferred that for every palette item, it points the line to the correct rectangle. Now we're going to demonstrate to Marquise that we want the color of the selected rectangle to change when we select an item in the color palette. So to do this, we want to bring back up the behavior that changes the color palette by selecting it again, and then manually changing the color of the selected rectangle to be the same color. Now Marquise knows, through inferencing, that you want the color of the selected item to change with the palette. This is a simple graph editor that was created by Marquise. The basic point of this demonstration is simply to show that it's very simple to do experimentation in Marquise with different types of interactions. This is a slight little game interface that I wrote up. The idea is that there's a little tank in the middle, and you can turn it in any direction, and when you press the turret, it says bang. This is an application that's kind of similar to Mac Project. When you click on the background, labeled boxes appear. When you drag out of a box, an arrow pointing to a new labeled text box appears. And if you click in a certain way, you can make little comments next to your nodes.